I'm Casey, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey,
Actually, when all that happened, we were like 90 days sober, I think, and it just goes to show you at 90 days sober, you can still help somebody. So anyway, my sobriety date's April 17th, 2015. I believe that's right. Anyway, this is my home group. I've got a sponsor, and I'm grateful that he was there when I called upon him. I was born right over here in Pinehurst at the Moore Regional Hospital, and I've lived here almost all my life, except for about 5 months I was in a halfway house in Asheboro. So that's the only time that I've ever been away from here. I grew up in, I don't know, like I used to get wrapped up in it, but not so much anymore. I grew up in a house where there was a lot of alcohol and substance abuse, but I don't know, for some reason, all up till I got here, I really, there was a lot of self-pity because of, that, but I don't know, what I found out was that was just my childhood. I'm pretty sure that, a lot of people have childhoods like that, and I, wasn't the only one. So, anyway, my parents, they're both from right here too. I've got a brother and a sister, and then there was me. I don't know, man, I'm just gonna skip over childhood. How about that? We'll just start. I started drinking and I started drinking and when I was about 12 years old. I remember it pretty, actually very clearly. We got a farm right down there in Hoke County, and me and my brother, we went down there. We had a little trailer down there, and we go hunting down there, and we stayed down there, during the wintertime. We'd go down there and stay 3, 4, 5 days during Christmas break. We'd stay down there, and actually I was with Adam's little brother. He came with us, and we went down there, and I think we got like a 18-pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade or something. And my brother was, he wasn't really intermingling with us. He was doing his own thing, but so we drank that, and pretty sure, to the best of my memory, I got sick that night, all the normal stuff that an alcoholic does when he starts drinking for the first time. Anyway, I remember, the biggest thing that I can remember about that night is feeling the effect produced by alcohol. I believe, when I was like 5, I might have took a drink of, my friend had like a hot Budweiser, and I remember there was like 3 of us standing around the driveway, and like, we all passed it around, took a big gulp of it, and like, I remember they spit it out, but I drank it, but I never felt the effect. It was just kind of like, I just did that type thing. But I really, for the first time felt the effect produced by alcohol that night. And I don't know, something clicked that night. I don't know what it was, but like I pretty much knew at that point I'm going to drink and try other things as much as I can from this point on. And that's what I did. A few days later, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I was getting my brother to go over to the liquor store and started drinking liquor. First bottle of liquor I drank was a pint of George Dickel, and I remember that. Now I was riding in a car, and my brother was, playing a joke on me. He said, "Take you a big gulp of it," and I had no idea, but I took a big gulp of that, and I'm telling you, my throat was on fire. That was some strong liquor. But anyway, I got that pint of liquor. I drank half of it that night, and then the next day, as soon as school let out, I drank the other half of that pint of liquor, and was, doing some substances, smoking grass. I mean, it wasn't that serious back then. I mean, it was just kind of something that I felt made me a part of everything else that went on in my family, and just, I don't know, I had a lot of notions in my head about doing stuff like that, just what people did, I thought, anyway, during school, I was always a pretty, up until probably 9th or 10th grade, well, let's back up, about 8th grade, right around that time, I was always a pretty good student, made, good grades, attentive in class, I enjoyed school for the most part up until 13, 14 years old, and liked, I had certain teachers I can remember back. I had a teacher in 3rd grade that I still remember. The guy was just a great guy, really helped me out. And at that point in time, there was a lot of stuff going on in my home life between my parents and all. They were getting divorced, and I was talking to Jonathan, I think, about this the other day, but I think that's one of the most common threads I've heard in here is with alcoholics is their parents getting divorced at a young age. I mean, it's not that it happens to everybody, but it certainly happens to a lot of us, and I remember that as, horrifying. I mean, it was a lot of change at an early age, and I just, it was not just that they were getting divorced, it was substance related and alcohol related, and I came home for one day from school and my father was gone, and hell, I didn't, he went from being there every day to I didn't see him for 2 or 3 years. I think I saw him once or twice. He was walking down the side of the road, but he went homeless. That's what he did. He went homeless. And my brother was about 18 or 19 at the time and went with him. So they were, it was gone, and I don't know. It's hard to keep something like that under wraps, when there's that much going on in a family. How can you keep it under, what I mean? There's always something going on. You can't keep it under wraps. You get, a child's going to hear things and know things. So, but anyway, like I said, when I started drinking and doing other things a little later on after that, I was able to maintain my grades, but definitely the ambition and drive that I had in school was, fading for sure. I remember maybe in 8th grade that year that I was talking about where it really kind of just everything changed. I had a teacher that came up to my desk. I'd been up a few days and was sleeping in class, and he came up and knocked on my door or knocked on my desk or whatever, and I kind of looked up at him and he asked me if I was all right, and I just told him, yeah, I'm fine, and I remember he had just kind of there was a look almost now, being older now, I know what that look was. He cared, and I guess, was worried about me, I just never really paid much attention to that back then. But anyway, I went on into high school, went to Union Pines High School up there, 9th grade year, and at that point it was all, pretty much all she wrote. When I got to high school, like in middle school, I was pretty much the only one doing the things I was doing, but when I got to high school, there was some people there that were, seniors, and they were, doing what I was doing, so I was hanging out with them, and not really hanging out with many people in my age group. I was, I'd still made honors classes that year, but that's when I started failing classes and not coming to school and running around doing whatever. Pretty much, there wasn't really a lot of rules in my life, but at that point, I wasn't following school. No, I always kind of figured that I knew better than they knew, and I'd be fine. And by 10th grade year, I guess I'd pretty much gained a reputation for what I was doing, and they would, I had suspensions, and if I wasn't coming to school, they were mad, but then when I'd come to school, they'd suspend me. So I was like, what, it don't really make a lot of sense. But anyway, they sent me to picnic for half a day, and then which which was like it was an alternative school, but it was also like they had like computer courses over there and stuff. So they sent me over there for half a day, and then would let me come back to school for half a day, and like there was a whole hour and a half in between where like you're supposed to be driving from Pinckney over there to Union Pines. The whole hour and a half I had to do whatever I wanted. So I had when I got up in the morning, and then the hour and a half, and then if I decided I'd skip a class and kind of just do whatever I wanted to do. But like I said, by 10th grade, I just quit coming, and I think I went up there maybe the week before school, junior year, and withdrew. Just went ahead and withdrew. Look, I ain't been here half the year last year. I just go ahead and withdraw. And my mother and my grandparents, my grandfather he had passed away at that point, but he was very, if I can say that there was a man in my life as a young child that was a role model, he would have been it. He was old school. He believed in working and family and just being selfless, pretty much. I mean, I don't ever remember him really doing a whole lot for himself. But anyway, that was a big deal. He, wanted me to at least finish high school, and my grandmother taught me some, and my mother, and they wanted me to get my GED, and so I went and I got my GED over at Sandhills. It took a couple weeks, and I got that, and went in. What I thought I was getting a head start on life. Started working, and I was working cutting trees down for a living at 17, and call it what it was. I mean, it wasn't a real job by any means. I was getting paid cash at the end of every day, and the guys that we were working with were, for lack of a better word, I mean, they were just wild as hell. The guy that owned the business was from down in the swamps of Alabama, and he was just wild as all get out. And they lived out in the middle of the woods in Carthage, and we'd end up, out in the middle of the woods, and that's pretty much where I stayed for, the next 3 or 4 years, right out there in Bass, Carthage area. I do remember, I mentioned Adam's brother earlier, but Adam and his brother, and we had some more friends and stuff. I remember I, pretty much completely quit hanging out with them at that point and started hanging out with another crowd that were I don't really know, they were a lot rougher around the edges, we can just say that, and started hanging out with them. They were like me, I'd been partying with my brother, since I was 13 years old, and they were, a lot of them were around my brother's age. He's 13 years older than me, grown men and stuff. So they had been partying a lot longer than kids my age, and I'd been partying, heavily abusing substances and alcohol, whatever you want to call it, for, I had done a lot more than a kid my age usually would. So I was hanging out with him, and at that point, since I was 16, I had been driving without a license, and so I, continued on driving without a license, and it is an absolute miracle that I didn't kill myself or kill somebody in a vehicle. The way that I used to drive was absolutely reckless. I can remember, we would just do the most insane stuff, like driving down the road at 60 mile an hour and yanking the e-brake and, just spinning and spinning. And I totaled probably 4 cars of my mother's. Just, being irresponsible, breaking the law and doing other things like that. But I remember at that time, I kind of shared it before, but it was like 2007, 2008, and it was like copper and scrap metal was like huge. It was like the gold rush, but it was copper. And we started, taking a lot of that stuff from people, and like in the beginning it was, we were going out in the woods and finding metal and abandoned houses and stuff like that, and taking the copper piping and air conditioning units, all, stuff like that. Eventually we got caught for it, and of course, consequences fell behind that. There was like 7 or 8 of us that ended up getting caught. And like it took a few years. I mean, we all ended up with probation and stuff like that. It took a few years, but over the next couple of years, like every one of us ended up going to prison. Like none of us could make probation or follow the rules that came with probation or any of that. And I look back on that now, and like I honestly believe that those probation officers gave me every chance that they could. Like I believe that they were trying to help me, and I just wasn't having it. I looked at them as authority figures, and they were trying to rule my life. But what they were trying to do was help me, and I've made contact with a lot of them since I've been sober, and nice people, and I was just I was just out in left field, you know what I mean? Just really crazy. I mean, I remember, like I would make them run and so, like chase me, you know what I mean? Like they would have to get out of their car and chase me and stuff, and it kind of stuns me now, you know what I mean? Like that I was even doing that to them. But I made amends to a lot of them, making the job a lot harder. Back then I looked at it as that's what they get paid to do, you know what I mean? It's kind of the way I saw it. But anyway, so we ended up, we all went to prison and stuff, did our time. And I remember being in that prison, and I remember, 15, laying in bed, thinking about suicide and stuff, and by the time I was 20, I ended up 20, I was in prison. I remember the whole time being absolutely miserable, and like I had no substances or alcohol in there. I didn't have no AA. Like it was just me in there, and my head, and a lot of people just like me, and I remember thinking like the whole time, like I'm done, like I'm not gonna do this again, like this is ruining my life, and I remember feeling hopeless, absolutely just disgusted with myself. I realized, once I got in there that like ain't nobody writing me, ain't nobody sending money my way, like I'm in there on my own. And I realized that, and like I say, I wanted to stay sober. I went to some AA meetings, but I look back at it now, and I believe that was just to get off the yard. I don't believe that there was any sincere, desire to go to AA to stay sober. I think I was just trying to, for some reason, common sense told me that I wouldn't, I would get out and I'd be all right, and things would change, and I still had some belief in myself, I guess. Like I thought, I could get out and handle it, like straighten up, and what I know now is that I'm a real alcoholic. Like there ain't no middle of the road solution, just like the book says. It's either I'm in this or I'm drinking. For me, and I'm cool with that. I'm good with that. But anyway, so I got out, and I went back to my mother's. My brother was staying there at the time. My dad was right down the road, and I think I made it maybe 2 days 1 day, 2 days, something like that. And that disease or illness, whatever you want to call it, started talking to me and told me that, this time would be different, and I can just have one, do one, whatever, and it'll be all right. So I did that, and I was 180 pounds when I came out of prison, and within 2 weeks I was back down to 130 pounds, and right back to doing that. I stayed out of trouble the next couple of years. My brother was working for a guy in the program at the time, who still comes here. I see him all the time, and he got me a job working with them, and that's when I started painting. So, I stayed out of trouble. Not to say that I wasn't, guilty, but they just, I was under the radar. It wasn't as obvious as I had been, and but eventually the day came again. I got in more trouble. Let me tell you that back. I caught some misdemeanor driving charges during that 2 years, just driving with no license, but nothing of any real significance. But anyway, the day came again. Something told me that I could go and commit a crime and be all right. And I hadn't done that in a long time, so of course I could get away with it one time. Considering the amounts of times that I had gotten away with it. Anyway, I ended up, that day I got caught and I went to Moore County Jail. I was sitting in the county jail, and I was sick, physically sick. And I stayed in there, months waiting for a court date and all that, stuff. And ended up when I got to the court date, the lawyer had worked it out where I could get out 6 months of house arrest, 3 years probation, suspended 3-year sentence, or a little over 3 years. Well, they called it a split sentence. I'd served time on that. They let me out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A lot of community service, and so I got out, and I was pretty much bound at that point. Like, I need to stay sober or I'm going to be back, in prison. And I went to my father's and started staying with my father right after that. And I don't take me wrong. Like, I'm not, when I say my brother or my father, like, I'm not putting any blame there. That was me. I chose to go in those, in those situations. But I went back there and I made it, I think, like 2 days again, and I'm on house arrest at this point. And I'm not staying sober. Now, my charge wasn't drug related, so they didn't urine test me at that point. But I thought that for sure they would, and I remember just waiting, and like 3 days would get there, and I'd tell myself all month I'm gonna quit 3 days before, and then 3 days would come, and I'll quit tomorrow and drink a lot of water, and then the next day would come and I'm dirty and I'm going up there anyway. It is what it is. And like I say, fortunately she never pissed me, but I ended up, as soon as I got off of that 6-month house arrest, I went back to what I had always known, which was a maintenance program. Since I had turned 18, I'd been on that maintenance program if I wasn't, locked up or whatever. And I went back up there and I waited around. I was up there another probably 6 months, 8 months. And the night came where at that point I'd moved back into my mother's because I, told her that if I could just get away from Dad and them, that I'd be all right. And I got back up there with her, and then out of nowhere one night I took the car and was gone for 3 or 4 days, and I came back home, and she was pissed. She stayed pissed at me a lot of times. She really cared about me, and I'd done a lot to hurt her at that point over the years, and I ended up deciding that I needed to try to do something. and I went to Wilmington Treatment Center, and again, I was, extremely sick. The program there was 28 days, and they were trying to tell me to stay 35, and at like 21, I was like, I gotta go. And I did. I said that I would go to a halfway house. I stayed in that halfway house like 2 weeks, and I walked out on the back porch, and I remember it very clearly. Something, I said, if I'm gonna relapse, I'm gonna relapse. I just didn't, at this point, even after all the consequences and the emotional pain and stuff that I went through, I just really didn't understand that, my alcoholism, it's just not going to happen. Like, I'm not going to leave someplace and just go stay sober on my willpower. Like, it ain't possible for me. My thinking is just totally askewed if I don't have something helping me with that thinking. Anyway, so I left there and I came back here. I remember it was like mid-January. I know that because my birthday was the 18th, and I showed up like a week before my birthday. And I'd been to, some meet. Like I said, my brother's ex-employer came here, so I had been to meetings here. I'd, tried getting a sponsor at different points, and just never really getting sober. But anyway, like I say, it was mid-January, and I walked right up through there, and there was Jonathan sitting there. Jonathan probably had maybe 9 months sober or something, 10 months sober at the time. And I talked to him, and it really stood out in my mind. I knew a lot of people in here, but he was about the only one that came up to me and spoke. And I remember that really, stuck in my mind for a long time. I still think about it sometimes. But I talked to him, and we agreed that he would sponsor me and all that stuff. And what was different about this time is I was actually sober. Any other time I'd ever come in here, I was on a maintenance program or whatever. It just never really worked for me. But anyway, I was actually sober, and I talked to Jonathan. He agreed to sponsor me, and we started reading through the book, and I was going to a lot of meetings at that point. I was here every night, and a lot of times I was coming during the day to the noon meetings and stuff. I didn't really have a job at that point. I ended up getting a job back. I got, a guy that had fired me, gave me a chance again to get my job back, and so I started working for him, and I don't think I worked there maybe 2 weeks, but a lot of things were going on that I didn't understand about. I was trying to talk to a girl at that point. I was leaving here and going out into the world and just being the same old guy that I'd always been, mean and lying and being dishonest, and eventually, like, it caught up to me. About, I guess I was 93 days sober. We had just started trying to work on a 4-step, and I just didn't want to look at that stuff. I guess, it was an excuse is what it was, but I wanted to, I didn't want to look at it. It was too painful to look at. And so what I did is I got a hell of a lot more pain. I ended up relapsing. I left a noon meeting, and I was going to my friend's house to get my radio fixed. I got a license for the first time. In that 90 days, a lot of stuff happened way too fast. I got a license for the first time in my life. I had gotten a job back. Just a lot of stuff that I look back on it now. I wish I had never gotten it. Like, it made it a lot, easier to stay sober at that point. I wasn't ready for it. And so I ended up out there, and I fought it for about 8 hours, sitting out there, I thought I was going to go out there and I thought I was going to distribute something. And the best way I've ever heard is a monkey can't sell bananas. And, I couldn't sell no bananas, you know what I mean? So I ended up relapsing, and I stayed up about 4 or 5 days. I showed up to work after being up, and they fired me on the spot, like, you gotta go. And so I did. I went, and for the next month I was I went to detox. I went to Bethesda. I mean, I had tried all kinds of different stuff. Finally at Bethesda, I just walked up to Miss B after about 2 days, and I said, look, I'm leaving here. There's no point in me being here. And I left. So, but I remember, like, I was still calling Jonathan, Jonathan was telling me, they got a place down there in Rockingham. And what I'd heard about that place was, I'd heard some stuff about that place. I heard that they hang a sign around your neck calling you a liar and, make you wear a dunce cap and all kinds of wild stuff. My dad told me everything. And, then I, was talking to Mark, and he was like, you got to shave every day. And I'm like, what? Why do I got to shave every day? That don't make any sense. What's that got to do with anything? And it had something to do with it. I just didn't know it. But anyway, so eventually I submitted, and I went down there, and something happened in that place. I guess I really started taking a look at my life, honestly, and realizing that I'm done. There's never going to be anything for me in this world if I keep doing what I'm doing. I had that probation officer pretty much told me before I went that if I come back up there dirty, that I'm done. I got to go off and do that time, which that played a big factor in it. I didn't want to go off and do more time, and so like I say, I went up there. Most people know here what they do. They do a little, they show you the first 9 steps. You work through the first 9 steps or 8 steps. You make a list, whatever. And I remember working on that 4 step so hard in there because I knew, I was in a safe environment and I had time to do it. And I worked really, really. The one that I did, after I got out of there wasn't much more than the one that I did in there because I just went full throttle with it in there. Anyway, they wanted me to go to Asheboro, North Carolina, and I did. Really didn't want to, but at that point I started kind of figuring out that I'm going to have to do stuff to stay sober that I don't necessarily want to do. And it wasn't necessarily about whether I wanted to do it or not, it just had to be done. And that's, kind of stuff that I started doing. I went to that place in Asheboro, found a job as soon as I got there painting. I was doing a meeting every day, working with a sponsor, going to an intensive outpatient course 3 times a week, which was 3 hours a night, and then an hour one-on-one, and very, very busy. And I'm glad I was. There wasn't a whole lot of time to be sitting around thinking, and I still did it anyway. I still, did a lot of thinking. That's just what I do. But I was busy, and after 5 months of being there, I worked through the steps with a sponsor. I had a sponsor up there that was, he believed in getting through the steps pretty quick. We didn't read the book. He gave me a list of things to do: pray, call him every day, 90 and 90. He had me trying to do some journaling. I'm not a big journaling guy. I did that for maybe 2 days, and I just really didn't do that no more. I'll be honest with you. But after 90 days, we sat down, we worked a 4-step, and went right on through the process. And by the end of my stay there in Asheboro, I had worked through the 12 steps, and I came back here. The night that I got here, I was in this building, and I was in this building for the next year, almost every night. I don't think I missed a meeting for a year after being back. I remember at 11, 12 months sober, me and Chuck were going at it, making 12, 14 meetings a week. we were still, I'm not very far in sobriety. I'm only 2.5 years sober, but at a year, I didn't have near as much going on in my life as I do today. And I had a lot more time to do Alcoholics Anonymous, as far as going to meetings and all that stuff. I've had so much happen in my life in the last couple of years. I was thinking about it, when I came in here, I was completely broken, in AA, and y'all people have kind of took me and put me back together and made something useful out of me. And God, of course, had a huge part to play in it. I remember sitting there talking to a guy when I came in here and met Jonathan that time. I said, my life's, I was just so wrapped up in me, like it was all, but he said, and here I've heard Harold share it a lot, sometimes when you think your life's falling apart, it's God putting it together. And that was absolutely the case for me. I never had no moment of praying out to God or any of that. Like God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. He got me in here and showed me y'all, and then y'all showed me Him. It wasn't any great moments of praying before I got here. I'm telling you, I didn't know anything about praying before I got here. Me and God, He did what He did, and I did what I did, and I didn't see much correlation there. But like I say, I've had a lot happen. I stayed in that recovery home over there for another year after I got back here, which if you stay in the recovery home, take advantage of what they offer there. It is it's different when you leave there. It's a little different, it's not, there's not, people holding you accountable near as much. It's kind of you sink or swim. So, but for the first time in my life, I've swam. I can't count all the blessings that I've gotten. I'm telling you, my girlfriend wants a house, and I'm staying in an apartment. And Bud, I'm here to tell you, I like an apartment. I'm good with that. Look, I ain't never had no apartment, I'm great with that. Like, we're good, you know what I mean? She's had a house before. I'm in an apartment. I like an apartment. That was great. But, being able to pay my bills every month, like I got a truck payment now, rent, insurance. I've got some bills today, and I'm telling you, I've never been used to handling responsibility, like ever. And when I first had to really start taking on a lot of responsibility like that, it was different, completely different. God blessed me, trusted me with His company, and put me to run, His paint company for Him, and I've been able to, come in here and take what y'all tell me in here and apply it and be honest with the guy, and we have a decent relationship as far as personal, but as far as business, he thinks the world of me, and sometimes he'll say stuff like that, and I'll be like, what the hell are you doing? Because I'm still sick. I still have a lot of thinking that's ajar, and I can be slaughtering his character a lot in my mind. But that's just kind of the way it is with me. I tell you, this is what I will tell you about that, is I had a lot of things really screwed up maybe 3 months ago, and I ended up taking off work for about 4 days. The world had me so wrapped up, and I took that 4 days and I started doing a 4-step again, and because hell, once I know, you know what I mean, and I started doing a 4-step again, and I started looking at that stuff on paper and was like, wow, I'm still here. I'm just sober. And I went over it with a sponsor and immediately got the relief from it and realized how screwed up it was and was able to recover from it and bring it back around. But it just goes to show you, there's always a little more work to be done in here, I swear. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, can't I just, go to a meeting and go home and just not have to put near as much into this as I've got to, but it's just the way it is. I reckon there's always some work to be done here, and newcomers I mean, that's one thing that really, I was listening to somebody last night in here, and it really brings back the memories of when I got here, And then on the other hand, seeing a guy come in and grab a hold of this program and start staying sober, like a new guy reminds me of the night when I just really, grabbed onto this and is really starting to get what's going on. Reminds me so much of what I saw in Jonathan that night when I walked down the steps, sitting there with a smile on his face, just so eager to have something different and receiving something different and enjoying a new life. I believe that's what it's all about here, is enjoying a new life. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up. Thanks for letting me share, guys.